Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first podcast, first in the series, Generational Wealth Through Properties with George and Sandeep. I'm here, Sandeep Jagtap, founder director of Finsource Mortgage and Finance Brokers, and I've got along with me George Churchian from James Chase Buyers Agents. So, welcome, George, and really excited to have you with me and embarking on this exciting journey together.
Thank you, Sandeep. Likewise, I'm very excited to be here with you and kicking off this podcast for our mutual clients and our community. Looking forward to providing a lot of value.
Fantastic. And before we get started, George, just a disclaimer for anybody listening to this. This is not financial advice. We are not providing financial advice. So whatever you listen here, please do not treat this as financial advice and action on it without understanding your own situation. So please make sure you get right professional advice from your accountants, finance planners. Sit down with us as mortgage brokers, buyers agents with your strategies, and then proceed. So without any more delays, let's get started with what we want to do with this series of podcasts, George, and what we want to achieve and what we want to share with the community as such. So, little bit of introduction about both of us and our organizations and our businesses and what we do is what probably would help people understand whom they are listening from and what sort of experience we bring to the table, so that we can provide a bit of education in terms of building generational wealth through property. So, George, a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you do and how it works at James Chase.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep. So George Churchian, founder of James Chase Buyers Advocacy. So we work predominantly with home buyers and property investors and support their property acquisition needs. So ultimately, we represent the buyer in a transaction and we're engaged by the buyer as well. So we act on their behalf from start to finish. So working with James Chase Buyers Advocacy, clients get a dedicated property professional in their corner and we act on their behalf from start to end.
Great. And likewise at Finsource, I'm finance brokers. Our business is close to 9 years since we started it in 2017. Started as a sole operator, and now I've got a good enough team, a team of 5-6 people in my team, multiple mortgage brokers, and people working in different disciplines of a business. And every broker has a niche. So our niche is we are brokers for investors. We help people generate wealth through property. So that's what we do, and that's what brings us to this podcast series with you, where we help people think how can they generate wealth through property. So yep, that's a little bit of introduction about both of our businesses. So George, a couple of questions that come first in terms of a buyer's agent. Why would somebody use a buyer's agent? Is a buyer's agent for everyone? And if they want to use a buyer's agent, why George and why James Chase? What would you say about it?
It's a good question, Sandeep. So I guess in terms of should everyone use a buyer's agent? Well, the answer to that, I guess, is it depends, right? So it depends on how confident you are in your ability to navigate property markets, how confident you are in your ability to formulate a strategy if you're an investor, and knowing where you sit on your investment timeline. And then also, how well versed you are with research, understanding what you're seeing, being able to sort of do your due diligence, negotiate, get on the ground, and then appoint people. So if you're confident in all of that and you have that sort of skill set, and certainly people do, then investing in a buyer's agent may not be for you. However, if you are time poor, for instance, working professionals, or you are not confident in your ability to search for a property, your ability to negotiate, at the end of the day, for most people, they purchase 1 or 2 properties over the course of their lifetime, and sort of negotiating against a real estate agent or a seasoned professional who does this for a living may be a little bit sort of intimidating. Then again, investing in a buyer's agent may be right for you. So in terms of why James Chase Buyers Advocacy, so I guess the key differentiator for us is we help clients make smart property decisions with strategy, clarity, and care. So our approach is very much sort of education-led and value-based. So we want to sort of leave clients in a better position than when they started. So it's very much sort of client-centric. We don't have a one-stop shop approach. So if you were to come to me and say, hey, George, I want to invest in property and I'm thinking of, let's say Queensland, for example, I'm not going to funnel you to a preferred market of mine as a result. So we would work with you to understand where you're at, what your budget is, and what's next as well, because we don't want the investment to hinder you. And then based off that, we'll formulate a strategy to secure a property for you.
Fantastic. That's amazing, George. And that's really interesting to see. There's so many things. There's so many buyer's agents in the market, and a lot of people are apprehensive about using a buyer's agent service and don't know which way to go, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It can be quite challenging, right? And same goes with other professionals as well. And I guess which is a bit of a good segue, because often when people are looking at their finance needs, and they don't go shopping for a property if they don't have their finance arranged.
Yes.
So when they're considering their finance needs, there are sort of lots of brokers out there, right? So it's probably the largest channel. So what is it that sort of separates FinSource from the competitors? And if I'm considering a broker, or a buyer is considering a broker, what sets you apart from the rest?
Good question, George. And look, as you said, there's a huge number of brokers. There's branches, there are mobile lenders from the bank, 19,500 brokers, and then there are mobile lenders. So there's heaps of options for a client to choose from. Then why us? Why use a mortgage broker in the first place? More than 75% of all the mortgages in Australia come through the broker channel. What does that tell you? That tells you that people are choosing more and more a broker to help them with their finances, rather than just walking direct to a lender and sort of getting a loan with a certain rate and whatnot. So that's where I think FinSource have got a little bit of a differentiating factor. A lot of brokers do an amazing job. A lot of brokers are absolutely great operators, and we are one of those who take best interest of the client at heart, keep that in our operations, in our day-to-day business, and we will work in the best interest of the client. We'll make sure the client's journey is absolutely stress-free. We have the structures, right lending structures for the clients. That's a normal pitch for many other brokers. But who are we? What is our niche? Every broker has got their niche. Our niche at FinSource is we are brokers for investors. So the investors who want to build a property portfolio, want to generate wealth through property, want to retire a bit early, and also want to have significant amount of wealth generated before they retire, that's where I think FinSource come into play. So we are not everything for everyone. However, we are a lot more diversified. I've got a big enough team. I've got myself as a broker. I've got Tejas as a broker. Nilima as another broker. Sachin, Swati, Mangesh, these are the retention and operation specialists. So we've got a team, which team will work around the clock all the time. And from time to time, we'll reach out to the client proactively, try to negotiate their interest rate, see if there is equity available, are they ready for the next step. So when a client comes in, we want the client to be a client for life. Our niche is we help the clients to pay the 30-year mortgage down in a maybe 5, 7, 10, 12 years, depending on their situation and depending on their appetite and depending on their capacity on how they can generate wealth quicker, and sort of keep building each block so that they can build their generational wealth through property as easily, as stress-free, and as fast as they can, and building solid foundation while they do.
Absolutely, Sandeep. And I can attest, sort of having worked with you for a number of years now and supported a number of your clients, they very much sort of take you as their expert in their corner. You have your clients' trust and they value what you bring to the table. So I can certainly attest to what you're saying. So I guess if I can now double down on that question. So let's say I'm sold on the fact that FinSource is my preferred broker for my next purchase. What will that journey look like? So if I'm your customer, what does that customer journey look like? What do I expect?
Fantastic, George. And look, I think this is a good question where what to expect, what is that you can think of when you decide to work with us. So look, we get customers at various stages in their investment journey. We get a lot of first home buyers who want to stop renting, get into their own property. We may get customers who have their own property and want to buy a first investment. People who are sitting with their multiple properties and they think, or they have been told by someone or some lender, broker, maybe they can't borrow anything more, to see options, see various vehicles where they can borrow through, and also keep building on their property portfolio, right? So we get clients through various stages of their property journey. And how does the journey look like? We sit down with the client, gather all the facts, ask them the very important question, and that's the why. What's their why? Why they want to get this loan? Why they want to buy this property? What's their journey looking like? What is their plan for the next 5 to 7 years? How does life look like in the next 5 to 7 years? For example, they want to start a family. The lady wants to go on a maternity leave. She wants to stay away from the workforce for a couple of years, or maybe a long holiday which has been postponed for a long time. They want to go on that. So those are the things which we need to make sure we need to look at before we embark on the journey with the client about their lending and their next property purchase, right? So understanding the facts, then understanding their current situation, where they are, looking at the incomes and looking at their expenses, what are the things they can be stopped, what are the things they know they don't realize are going out of their pocket, which is affecting their borrowing, which is affecting their wealth generation. So those are the things which we'll find out. Once we find that out, we gather all the facts. We'll go back to the client with a strategy, or when I say the strategy on how to structure their debt so that they are in a position to, maximize their potential and get to the next step and next step and next step, and eventually achieve their financial freedom through property, right? So after that initial proposal, which we discuss with the client, we zero in on the lenders which we go to. We'll finalize the application. The application will go through the lender, get approved, settle if it's refinance and equity extract, get a pre-approval for the next purchase, and then we'll send them to you. And then you can shop property for them. You can work your magic and you can get them a property. So when the customer comes to FinSource, we get everything and we get them ready. They will come to the buyer's agent. So how would a journey with George look like? A journey with James Chase look like for a client who wants to build generational wealth through property?
Yeah, great question, Sandeep. And I think one of the things you said there resonated, and we have a similar approach, right? Is understanding the client's driver, their why. And like you touched on, for us as well, it's very important that property investment doesn't hinder, an investor, I guess, or our clients from their milestones. It's not meant to be a stressful activity.
True.
Being an investor, it's meant to complement your lifestyle and position you to achieve what you are setting out to achieve. So for us, at the very beginning, we try and understand the why also. So the very first conversation with a client essentially is a bit of a discovery, a bit of a fact find. So they get to know who we are, what our values are, how we operate. And conversely, we also find out about the client, right? So we want to get an understanding of who they are, why they're investing, why they want to buy property, what their experience is like to date, and also understand sort of what their journey has been like for that particular transaction, right? So how long have they been looking? What's worked, what hasn't? So once we determine, whether we can support their brief, whether we can work with the client, and they're happy to work with us, we enter into a service agreement. So from there, we essentially take carriage of the entire thing. So we do all the research, we do all the evaluation, we do all the due diligence, and then management of other complementary professionals as well. So that way we take that bit off the client's hands and we act as a bit of an extension of them. So we're working with obviously yourselves on the finance side of things. We work with a preferred sort of conveyancer, with the building and pest, and then once we've gone unconditional, we'll help them appoint a property manager as well. So the service delivery with James Chase with us is essentially fairly sort of comprehensive. It's all inclusive. So that way the journey is as seamless as possible for the client.
Fantastic. And George, one more thing. Why do we both want to do this series of podcasts, Generational Wealth Through Property? And I think our discussion when we last caught up was a lot of people don't know where they are, what they want to do, why they want to do it. Like, because my friend bought a property, should I buy? Because I saw it on some TV channel that somebody has bought about 18 properties in 24 months or whatnot, ridiculous things we hear. And should I do it for that? And also, a lot of people get stuck. They buy, as you said earlier, they buy one or two properties, and then they don't understand, or they can borrow more because they have got the wrong type of property or wrong type of structures they bought in. Different vehicles in property buying, the trusts, the self-managed super funds, pulling out equity, releasing equity to buy the next one, maximizing the tax benefit by having the right debt structures, working with their accountants. So, a typical investor should have really a team of professionals working for them, right? So an accountant, a financial planner, a mortgage broker, buyer's agent like yourself, a great real estate agent to manage the properties after the properties are being purchased. So while the property is building the wealth, it's looked after. Otherwise, then you got a situation where, you know, uh, uh, we aim to achieve something and we don't get there. So that's the intention and that's the reason for us coming together. George, correct me if I'm wrong here, that we will bring a new topic every now and then and in our different podcast, and we'll try to sort of deep dive into those uh, those topics and try to pass on as much knowledge as we can from based on our experience that you got. So what are your thoughts on that, George?
Absolutely. And I think that's key, right? So we're living in an age where there's a lot of information that's available, and it's very easy to sort of fall into a trap of, paralysis sort of analysis. I think the expression is, or analysis paralysis more correctly. So what we want to do is sort of peel the curtain back, talk about our own experience with what we're seeing. And to your point around, people getting caught up with, their friends or colleagues building large portfolios. For us, I guess, we want to sort of take a step back. Is that necessarily the right thing to do, for you as an individual, or do you have a different chart, right? And we all come from sort of different backgrounds. We all come from different experiences, different financial positions. So what is right for one person isn't necessarily the rest. So I guess what we want to do through this meeting is just provide good value, a bit of education, and just help people sort of realize that it's okay to sort of formulate their own path forward.
Fantastic. And look, that's where I think our first episode, where we try to sort of outline what we want to do and where we want to get to in this journey and provide as much knowledge as possible. We kick off what we want to discuss today is what's happening in the market, what we see today, and how you see things going in the next year. So a few things that have happened this year, George, like this, as this year began, where the home interest were in the interest rates were in the sixes, the cash rates rate was 4.35, and people were struggling to afford the cost of living and everything. It was taking a toll on everyone, and the RBA found that the RBA have been in a position where these measures which they have taken have helped reduce the inflationary pressures, and they think they have got inflation reasonably where they want, and they started dialing down the interest rate. So we've seen three interest rate cuts from the top, and we are seeing about 0.75% lower now, which is given people a little bit of relief in where they are. That's one thing. And the second thing, which is very important, which recently came out, was the government they're trying to deliver on their election promise, where they want more and more first-home buyers to get into their homes. So as of 1st of October, they are relaxing the first-home buyer benefits which they were providing to help more and more first-home buyers to get into the property market. So what's happening there is the income cap has been taken off. It used to be $125,000 for an individual or $200,000 for a couple in the previous financial year, which has been taken away, which means that more and more buyers can take benefit of this opportunity there. The property price caps have been revisited and they have been adjusted upwards, which means more and more properties qualify for that sort of are available in the market for the first home buyers, right? And the third thing, which there used to be limited spots every financial year under the scheme, and then if you lose out or miss out on that, you have to wait for the next round of applications being open. So which has been changed to sort of unlimited spots there. A lot of things will get clear as we get closer to the 1st of October, the lenders, what the process will be and whatnot, and any other things which we need to do. And we will definitely share it with the clients in the coming days. But that means a lot of activity we as mortgage brokers expect in the market. And I think we are already seeing a lot of uptick in the volume, a lot of uptick in the number of meetings and inquiries we get. And we expect the next 12 to 18 months absolutely positive in terms of the activities in the market. And that brings me to ask you what you think with these changes which I just mentioned, or any other changes that you see drive the market towards. How do you see the environment at the moment, and what should anybody who's an investor expect? going forward.
Absolutely, Sandeep. And, everything you've covered off, I've also sort of seen on the ground as well. And we see sort of the knock-on effect of that. You would know, obviously, in this country, just even the talk of an interest rate reduction
True.
is enough to stimulate the market, let alone the actual reduction itself. So coupled with the incentives from the government to help first home buyers, I think that's a really good thing to try and help more people get into their home. So we have very much sort of noticed right off the back of the cuts more activity in the markets at certain price points, right? So the lower end of the markets up until sort of the 1.5 to 2 mil mark has been sort of quite busy for some time now. And that's largely driven off and stimulated by those rate reductions. So when it comes to sort of auctions and open homes at that point, the clearance rates are increasing sort of week on week. And it's sort of, again, sort of taking steps towards a very busy market at that price bracket. Now, ultimately, I think those measures would benefit sort of the first home buyers as well in terms of some of the new schemes. And we're sort of expecting a bit of a price growth as a result of assets sitting between sort of the $1 and the $1.3 billion mark, because ultimately the government scheme will have more demand funneled towards properties that were previously, I guess, out of contention for these people. So the knock-on effect, I guess, from an investment perspective is there's going to be sort of increased competition in these markets at these price points. And it just...
Some recent capital growth in a very short span is what you can see because of that activity in the market as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And we saw that through the COVID period as well, right? So the more buyers, the more interest, the more activity, then it ultimately sort of, it's a supply and demand sort of battle, right? So it will push up sort of the capital growth. And for an investor, I guess that's the sort of time that you want to be sort of in the market and try and ultimately ride that wave. So things are sort of very well aligned for another sort of mini boom over the coming sort of 12, 24 months and beyond. So from an investment perspective, so having a strategy in place, talking to your mortgage brokers, understanding your borrowing capacity, and then having a strategy to be able to go and execute to, it's certainly a timely time for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, George, what we have seen during the last couple of years when the lending was extremely difficult because of the interest rates being very high and cost of living pressures and all, people found different ways to build on their property portfolio, like the self-managed super funds. More and more self-managed super funds are being set up now. We have seen big uptick in the self-managed super fund loan requirements. People want to take control of their retirement. People buying under the trust, various structures, people buying jointly. And those are the things which has seen a lot of activity in the market, right? And you must have also seen a lot of people wanting to buy properties in the self-managed super fund, want to buy now, set and forget for next 15, 20 years, where they would be able to in a position to encash on that and work on the and have that money ready for as a pension, and they can draw it at their retirement rather than sitting back and sort of relaxing and thinking whatever they have in their traditional industry super is going to service their requirement at retirement. So that sort of properties, you may have seen that uptick in that sort of purchases as well.
Absolutely, Sandeep. Absolutely. So I guess at the moment we're sort of in that sort of interest rate cutting phase as far as the RBA goes. But prior to that, we had several increases for quite a protracted time, right? And so for those investors who were sort of proactive with their wealth creation or their portfolio growth, they sort of looked at that and went, well, we may have hit a borrowing ceiling after consecutive rate rises. What do we pivot to, right? And for those who their preferred investment asset class is real estate, they've obtained the right advice from a financial advisor, they've spoken to their accountant, and their circumstances allow them to essentially roll into a self-managed super fund and then continue investing in their preferred asset class, i.e. property. So certainly over the last few years, I've seen an uptick in the number of clients who are investing in property through a self-managed super fund. I think that trend will continue, to be honest, because as the median price points of properties across various markets etches higher and higher, then people will need to become sort of a little bit more creative around how they continue adding to their portfolio as well. So, and that seems to be a good measure at the moment.
Fantastic. And look, that's where I think, in this property building or wealth building journey through the property, what is important is having the right structures, having the right professional like yourself, like us, having a great accountant and a financial planner to work with, to have the right structures, get the benefits, the tax benefit they can get while building this portfolio, and also build wealth and build equity in the properties which they can use to progress their portfolio building, right? So that's where I think everybody needs to think uh, really uh, uh, before they embark on that journey, that how they want, what they want, why they want something, and why they want to go embark on this journey, how they want to build it, and how they don't want to be stressed while they build this journey, right? So having the right structures, using equity rather than using upfront cash to buy an investment property, which will help them maximize their taxes, which will buying in the right pockets using services like yourself, or buying in the right pockets where the equity can be generated fast enough so that that can help facilitate the next purchase, right? So I think why property in this country, and why do you think generational wealth can be created through property? Obviously, nobody should have all their eggs in one basket. They should diversify their investment, but property can be looked at as one great vehicle to generate wealth. So, your thoughts, George, on why property in this country would do well, and why somebody should have a property portfolio building, or have a portfolio of maybe one or two investment properties, three investment properties, maybe 10 investment properties in self-managed super fund and whatnot. And why property is here to stay? Because honestly speaking, what I have seen when I first came to Australia in 2004, the properties were $200,000, $300,000, and now we can see median prices in Sydney well over $1 million, right? So there's so much demand in there, and there's so much activity happening in the market, and that's where I think a lot can be done in the next number of years, and people can, and without having a strategy and without having a sort of a methodical approach in building this portfolio on a 9 to 5 job and your savings in the sukkur, you're not going to retire well, right? So, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think, often sort of property and property investors are sort of made to be the villain in that story, right? Because pushing up property prices and everything else. But when you sort of take a step back and you sort of have a bit of a look at what's actually driving the market, the property market, and some of it is as basic as supply and demand, right? So we have a limited supply, we have a skill shortage, we are not building the number of houses as a nation that we set out to do. We've set some pretty hefty targets in terms of the number of new homes we should build, but we're not getting anywhere near that, right? So I think the supply side is certainly lacking. But then let's have a look at the demand side of the equation. Our population is also growing at a very, very fast rate. So immigration's obviously been a hot topic over the last several months, but our government sort of relies on immigration to stimulate the economy. So that immigration trend is here to continue. So it started off during COVID, and certainly sort of there are some years where we were joined, I guess, by immigrants coming to Australia and making it home. So if we're not building properties for these people to live in, then they're going to be competing against sort of everyone else who's already here, right? So if the supply isn't increasing and the demand is increasing exponentially, that ultimately means there are more people competing for the same thing, i.e. real estate. So that price is only going to go in a particular direction. So over the long term, whether it's sort of metropolitan markets, whether it's regional markets, I think that we stand to see the asset class perform well into the future.
Great. And look, that's really interesting, George, because the demand is there, the supply is a fair bit behind, and that's where it creates all the competition in the market, and that's where we can see great growth in the property over the last few years, right? Post-COVID, the boom has been significant in certain states. Yes, states like Victoria haven't done as well, but Western Australia, New South Wales, Queensland, even South Australia have done really well, right? So that's where my next question to you, George. What do you see in different states? Where are the markets at this stage? And what do you expect with certain key states in the next 12 to 18 months or next couple of years? And the reason for that question is, are investors who want to buy now and want to generate that equity and want to progress their journey, what should be the consideration when it comes to which state to invest in and where to go for?
Absolutely. I guess when it comes to sort of the consideration of where to invest, it very much depends on where you are in your journey, right? In your investment journey. Are you sort of at the start? Are you towards the end? And how active you are as an investor as well.
And how long you got to go to retirement?
Absolutely. So what your timeline is like. So if you're a new investor who's sort of just entered the workforce a few years ago and you're buying your first or second investment property, you have a longer time horizon. To your point, you might be sort of more conservative, a little bit risk averse. So you would have a different approach and you would look at different markets. Whereas if you're, let's say, in your sort of late 30s, 40s, 50s, your timeline might look a little bit different. Depending on what you've achieved, your risk appetite might be, more or less aggressive. And then you would look at, I guess, more complex strategies and locations than someone who's at the start of their journey. So I guess the asset class would very much differ. But in terms of sort of a bit of a state-by-state play, over the last several years, we've obviously seen, the Western Seaboard, WA, South Australia perform really, really well for a 2-3 year period. Those markets are still sort of coming along quite steadily and performing quite well. So there was a lot of investor activity over the last several years headed that way. A lot of that traffic and attention now, though, over the last 12 months has pivoted back to the eastern seaboard, back to the east coast. So investors are very much looking at your Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria at the moment for their next purchases. Now, the opportunity there, I guess, is that there's still a lot of value in markets like Brisbane, Gold Coast, some of the larger sort of cities, whether it's sort of in Queensland or your Newcastle, your Hunter Valley, your Central Coast regions in New South Wales. So what we're seeing is people come back to these markets because they realize that there's value to be made, and the way things are positioned, we're expecting another boom in these markets over the next 12, 24, 36 months. Now, with that said, when you sort of are looking at the East Coast, some of these price points in these markets are quite, I guess, the entry barrier is a little bit high, right? So then we sort of look at if our budget is a little bit more modest, where can we look at? So Victoria obviously presents a really good opportunity at the moment. And again, a lot of investor focus is on the Victorian market, where we're sort of seeing a lot of research and a lot of inquiry directed in some key regions in Victoria.
Yeah, Victoria has suffered a lot during and post-COVID, where they are the worst possible COVID in the world, and Brisbane has overtaken the price points in Victoria, and same has been the case with Western Australia and South Australia. So Victoria is primed for growth, is what they say.
Absolutely. So, going back, years before COVID was a thing, it was Sydney and Melbourne were the two dominant sort of cities. Yes, of course. And then that's now changed dramatically, right? And some of it is due to the legislative changes that were sort of made to sort of, I guess, encourage the Victorian home buyer or the first home buyer. There's also some measures taken to disincentivize investment into the state as well, with things like land tax thresholds. So making, I guess, an impact to holding costs for Victorian investors or investors who choose to invest in Victoria. With that said, though, I guess as sort of time goes on, people's train of thought changes and they sort of look at that and go, well, it's actually just another holding cost, right? So if we're talking a couple of $1,000s, it's not a reason not to buy into a particular market. So now with Victoria and the way it's positioned, it's very much an early adopter market where there are suburbs, within 40, 45 Ks of the CBD where you're buying assets for under $600,000, $650,000. And there's no other city in the country like that. So you sort of look at that and go, well, if I'm at the start of my investment journey and not towards the end, and I have a longer time horizon, then and a modest budget. So perhaps Victoria could be a state or a location that one starts to consider.
Interesting. That's interesting, George, and that's what we've been hearing a lot from professionals like yourself, where there are markets which have done really well, there are markets which will continue doing well, and there are markets which are waking up and should do really, really well. So the reason for this question was, George, that people want to build a portfolio, and in building a portfolio, there are two things which are key to an investor. First being growth, and second, the pace of that growth, because that is where the equity can be freed up. Because by putting money towards the next property's deposit is a difficult thing unless you generate it manufacture it through the equity from the property, right? So that's where I think certain key markets and certain markets to look at certain times is a very key question, and that's That's why this question. And that brings us to a close of this first episode. Hopefully you guys have liked it. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll be coming back to the next couple of episodes. We'll come back to you with a few other topics like regional versus metro. That will be one of the next ones. And off the plan versus established properties, self-managed super fund, and more important is how a journey of an investor can look like. So let's thank you very much, George, for joining me today, and both of us sharing our first installment of this exciting journey. And let's come back next time and talk on one of these topics which I just mentioned.
Thank you, Sandeep. I look forward to it.
Thanks, George, and let's see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.